Is transfer portal tampering, the fear of tampering via the transfer portal, hindering teams' ability to do a spring game? Is that why everybody's canceling spring games? No, it's not. That and more, plus a little bit of Tennessee spring practice. All that here on a Friday at Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Friday morning Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Kane. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Go ahead and hit that subscription button. Follow us, download our episodes. Can't thank you enough, and it's going to be a fun show. Boogie Bentley, Locked On Talking Vols. That's what we call the segment. The Talking Vols Network going to join me in segment 3 to get his thoughts on what he's looking for Tennessee spring practice beginning this morning here on a Friday. Tennessee football adds another analyst. I low-key love what this staff looks like. I think Josh Heupel's done a great job this offseason addressing some needs. And you're probably sitting here like, well, what are you talking about? The coaching staff's pretty much intact. I'll explain coming up in segment 2. But here to kick off the show, spring games across the country are getting canceled. They're getting canceled. They're doing away with it. If not this year, this is the last one. There's been no official rules or there's been no official announcements regarding Tennessee, but it's a copycat league. If the majority of the SEC is going to do away with spring games, Tennessee's going to follow suit at some point, right? It's just a matter of time. But we're all trying to figure out what's the reason, and this coach said this, and this coach said this. I'm going to tell you one reason these games are not being canceled, and that is the fear of transfer portal tampering. Okay? That's just not how this works. If I want to go and poach a player from South Carolina, from LSU, from Florida, Georgia, Alabama, BYU, whoever, okay? It's the spring game, and the film and the tape available from the spring game is not going to be my deciding factor. In fact, let's take it a step further. Even an unproven redshirt freshman, underclassman, reserve player that might get the ability to shine in said showcase of a spring football game, I'm still not going to, like that tape and that performance from a spring game is not going to be my deciding factor. So it's just a little ridiculous. And Matt Rule's kind of talked out both sides of his mouth a little bit. You know, earlier in the, or I guess a couple of weeks ago, whenever Nebraska canceled their spring game, he said, I don't want to do it. I don't want teams poaching my players. I mean, I'm fearing tampering, right? That's just not how this works. And there's been several coaches anonymously, but there have been several coaches that have come out the last couple of weeks saying that's just not how this works. That's not the fear. The point blank, the reason that teams are canceling spring games is coaches don't want to do them. Coaches don't want to fool with them. And the reason I'm kind of bringing this topic up right now is because the official details were released yesterday for the orange and white spring game for Tennessee. We knew it was going to be on April the 12th, Saturday, April the 12th. It's going to be at 2 o'clock, $10 admission, 45,000 fans allowed inside the friendly confines due to ongoing construction renovation at the stadium. No television broadcast, but the Vol Radio Network will have a broadcast so you can listen. So a couple things here and why I think are contributing factors to spring football games, not spring football, but games going away. Number one, the coaches and the coaching staffs, they don't want to do them, okay? Because it's funny. Football's been around since the 1800s, late 1800s. Football's been around, okay? And sure, there's some new innovation. Sure, there's some new concepts and some refreshments, and let's put a spin on this, and let's do this, but let's do it this way. There's tweaks and all that, and that's fine. That happens all the time. But we are not reinventing the wheel when it comes to the game of football. I'm sorry. Since the forward pass, we are not reinventing the wheel. Remember the Wildcat when the Miami Dolphins started doing the Wildcat back in, 04, 05, or 06, 07, whatever, with Cadillac and Ronnie Brown? Ricky Williams, sorry, that was Auburn, is Cadillac, and was it Ricky? I don't know, whoever it was. That's been done before. It's just the NFL went away from it, and so it caught everybody by surprise there for a little bit. The RPO is a big wrinkle, here lately. So many teams, both college, high school, and of course the National Football League, are adapting to an RPO scheme. That's nothing new. So again, my point is we're not reinventing the wheel here. But if you're a coach, you still don't want to put that out on display. You don't want, fans to record it on their phones and post it on social media. Coaches are super secretive. When we go and we film and we shoot highlights of Tennessee practice when the media is allowed in there. It's about 10 minutes of stretching, and then it's like maybe 5 minutes of Indy. Sometimes we're lucky and we get to see more, but that's typically it. We're not even allowed to shoot certain things, like simple things like mesh point. Like, what in the world is someone going to steal from that? It's like coaches are so scared that things are going to be like schematically, they're going to be pickpocketed and they're going to show their cards or whatever. So number one, that's the reason. Number two, you get more out of a closed door scrimmage. Tennessee will have a couple of different closed door scrimmages leading up to the orange and white game, and you're going to get more out of that because the playbook's going to be open a little bit more. You can do a little bit more blitzing defensive schemes. The spring games are super, super vanilla. So those are the main reasons why. But here's another big reason why. I don't know this like for a fact, but just in some conversations I've been having later this week, a lot of people were asking me like, hey, why is there no streaming? Why is there not going to be a television broadcast of the orange and white game? And in years past, it's been really, really popular. The SEC will broadcast certain games, but I think, as late as last year, every team in the SEC had their spring game at least streamed, right? I don't know if there was that much interest this go around. I think that was kind of part of the reason why Tennessee's not going to have a video stream of this orange and white game, because I don't think, I could be wrong here, but people I've spoke to, I'm not sure that the SEC network had much interest in it. There's more interest right now in softball and in baseball, and rightfully so. College games growing so much. Softball's always been super popular on the ESPN landscape, so I get it. So that's kind of another factor in that regard. But here's the deal. Like, take the orange and white game, for example. For so many years, it was free. And, I think it started at like $5 a couple years ago, and now it's $10. $5 and $10, that's not a whole lot of money, okay? But to some families, maybe it is. Maybe some people can't afford to do that anymore, and that's frustrating because they depended on the orange and white game free admission to go, and that was their Tennessee football fix for the year. Or maybe you can't afford tickets in the fall anymore, so you make sure you go to the orange and white game and you pay that $10 a head or whatever it is. That's no big deal compared to the hundreds and hundreds of dollars you got to pay to get in the house now. And same for Lindsey Nelson Stadium, same for Food City Center and all that and more. That spring game is kind of your avenue to college football. That's kind of your fix. That's kind of your door into the team a little bit. And thirdly, of course, as a young Volunteer fan, you kind of usher in a new era of Tennessee fans by taking them to an orange and white game. And again, for reasons I just mentioned, maybe you don't want to take your 3 or 4 year old to the Tennessee Alabama game where there's 102,000 fans in there, or whatever it is now, 101,000. Maybe you don't want to take your 5-year-old to that football game, but with their 45,000 due to construction, that's more doable. And so that could be that first memory for that child about, oh, Tennessee football. How about that? Oh, that's cool. That can be kind of your first memory and can spark a new, a light in your fandom. So, I think the spring game should stay for a lot of those reasons I just pointed out. But back to the whole point about them being canceled, it's not because of transfer portal. If I want to go and get a player from somewhere else and I want to tamper via the transfer portal, there is film everywhere. There are people out there that will get you the resources and get you what you need to know about said player, that you don't have to rely on a televised broadcast of a spring game. So I just think that, in all the talks about this program's canceling the spring game, this program's canceling the spring game, and you continue to see the excuse, I guess, because, I'm afraid of tampering. I'm afraid of tampering. They don't want to do tampering. That's just not the case. That's not how big boys go about getting good football players on your football team. So I thought that was kind of silly. I thought it was kind of funny. I would like to know what your thoughts are on spring games. Do you want to see them stay? Do you want to see them go? From a coaching standpoint, I get it. I understand it. From a college football fan, from a guy that went to many orange and white games growing up, I think nostalgia, I love it. I think it's needed. And also, I will remind you, the last 10, 15 years or whatever, the fan day's not been attached to that. So back in the day, man, you went in free of charge. And again, I'm not crapping on the administration for making it $10. I mean, look, we live in an era where revenue share is coming. I mean, it is what it is. Like $10 is not that much. And if you want to go to the orange and white game and you can't afford it, please reach out to me. I'd love to help you. But I'm just saying, like, the $10 charge and an error revenue share. That's nothing, right? But nonetheless, back 10, 15 years ago, you had Fan Day attached to it. You go in, you take pictures, you sign autographs, you see the orange and white game, and that was what it was all about. But since they've done away with that, I mean, it's not necessarily what it used to be. And sure, we get to see some football, and as a media member, that's more football than I've got to see the entire spring practice. So I don't want to see it go away selfishly for those reasons as well. It's still just not the same, but it's still something. It's still an opportunity to spark that next flame of Tennessee Vol fandom in the next generation. I don't know. I don't know what Tennessee football plans to do with the spring game moving forward. They will have one, obviously, this year. It's going to be on the 12th of April. Will that be the last one? I don't know, but I do know that there are programs all across the country canceling their spring games and doing away with them, and Tennessee, or any school for that matter, is not going to be the last team standing. It's just not how it works. But the fact that these teams and programs are canceling spring games, it is not because of the fear of tampering via the transfer portal. That is just not, it's not believable. And I don't know why people are continuing to say that. Spring practice starts today for the Big Orange. We'll continue to talk about that all on next week's show. And, of course, later in the show, whenever I talk with Boogie Bentley, that's coming up as we continue on the show. But I want to do a roster. I want to do a staff reset. Low-key, I think Josh Heupel's done a heck of a job assembling his staff this offseason. You're probably sitting here saying, there's not been many changes. Well, I'll get into it. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Vols. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, all right? With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in all the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay, an example of which I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use, so when you win, you get paid instantly. No sitting around waiting on, okay, when's that going to hit the account? You get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com to shoot your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I think Josh Heupel's done an excellent job enhancing his coaching staff this offseason. And you're probably sitting here saying, well, my biggest problem is Glenn Ellerbe. He's still there. My biggest problem is Joey Halsley. He's still there. My biggest problem is Tim Banks. He just got a big raise. My biggest problem is Willie Martinez. There's been no changes there. And I will say, okay, Josh Heupel does not fire coaches. So far as a head football coach, I wasn't on the beat down there in Orlando, so I can't speak specifically for his 3 years at UCF. But as a head football coach here at Tennessee, he doesn't fire coaches. He just hasn't. Maybe it's because he was fired at Oklahoma and he just doesn't want to do it. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's not been who he's been. Now, there have been coaches leave for other opportunities and all that. There's been some movement, but Josh Heupel's not been a fire coach guy. A lot of people say eventually if you want to win the big games, you got to be able to fire a coach. I don't disagree with that. But my point is that's just not who he is. But Mike Eckler did leave and go to Nebraska. So you promote LaVorn Harbin, Coach Chop, if you will, and he comes up and he's coaching your outside linebackers. And again, we've talked about it a lot on this show, and this was a couple of weeks ago. But for those of you guys that follow Tennessee football, specifically Tennessee recruiting, you know that name. Coach Chop. Coach Chop, he's been instrumental recruiting-wise for Tennessee. He has been on the road several times throughout the last couple of years whenever a said coach was pulled off the road or a said coach had a conflict or whatever the case may be. He's been on the road. And because it doesn't matter how many coaches you have on the sidelines no more or in practice no more, he's been coaching the Leos. He's been coaching the outside linebackers for a while now. So of all the internal hires that Josh Heupel's made over the years, this one is the one that you shouldn't have an issue with because it makes the most sense. So Coach Chop is taking over for Mike Eckler. We knew that. Okay, that is what it is. There's been some other ones as well that I'll get to in a moment, but my point is the other big change, if you will, the most recent change, I should say, is the addition of Alan Williams, defensive back coach. And if you're unfamiliar with who Alan Williams is, go look him up. Go read his stuff. He has his own website as well. very, very respected coach in football circles, okay? He's been a very, very, very well-respected coach in the National Football League. Got his NFL career started. Former player William & Mary, played wide receiver, coached a little bit of high school, started his collegiate coaching stints with the position at William & Mary back in the late 90s. But, and then he went to the NFL, and, he was in Tampa Bay with Tony Dungy in 2001. He went to the Colts with Tony Dungy, where he won a Super Bowl with, Peyton Manning. He was also the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, the Detroit Lions, and most recently the Chicago Bears. So got a lot of experience coordinating defenses at the National Football League. Again, William & Mary, Northview High School. That's kind of where he got his start in coaching before going to the NFL. But a really, really interesting character, and Josh Heupel has added him to his defensive staff as an analyst. That is the third analyst, or that's the fourth analyst, actually, that he has, or I guess third because Chop's leaving, but that's the third analyst that he's brought in for this staff. So you got Chop going to coach outside linebackers. You're now bringing in Alan Williams to help with the defensive backs. Okay, he's not, quote, one of the core 9 assistant coaches, but he's an analyst going to be helping development of that defensive backfield, and a guy that's done an awful lot in the National Football League. We already know that Evan Crabtree, who was already an analyst on staff, special teams assistant to Mike Eckler, he's been now given the promotion and the tag of special teams coordinator. Okay, you're bringing in John Bonamago, who has head coaching experience, who has been a well-respected special teams coach in the National Football League. And you're bringing him in to help mold and guide Evan Crabtree, okay? And then, a couple of weeks ago, or earlier this week, actually, or maybe it was last week, I don't know. It's baseball season. My head's a little skewed right now. You bring in Seth Littrell, former head coach at North Texas, former offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. We know that he used to play with Josh Heupel. Innovative offensive mind that did a whole lot of good things in Conference USA football. So my point is, you're bringing in a lot of quality coaches to help supplement your coaching staff, to help develop these players. And more importantly, you're bringing philosophies. And the example I love to use, fresh coats of paint, okay? Josh Heupel's offense isn't broken, but Josh Heupel's offense in 23 and 24 does not look the same that it did in 21 and 22. The tempo's slower, the explosive plays are down, red zone efficiency is not there. You know what I'm saying? They're doing things well. Running the football has been a consistent all 4 years. And yes, you've made a change of offensive coordinator, made a change at quarterback in between the first 2 years and the last 2 years. I recognize all that. But having another voice in the room to suggest, to help game plan, to help coach individual drills that differs from the norm of the same old Heupel to Halsley to Ellerby. And I know Sims is a new cat. I know Ablin's still in that tree, though. He played for Heupel, or played under Heupel when he was at Missouri, played under Ellerby, who was his offensive line coach. Ablin very much falls under that tree. But Sims is kind of new to that mix. Jerry Max, that's why I love Jerry Mack being on the staff a couple years ago. Absolutely was also a former head coach and was kind of there to be an advisor for Josh Heupel, and he left. And now he's back in the college game, Kennesaw State head coach, so best of luck to him. But I love when you get outside guys to come in and kind of help. Because if you continue to do the same old, and a lot of times it's by nature, you're not intentional with that, but it's kind of like, well, that's how I've always done it. That's how I've always done it. Well, why don't you try this way? Just see if it works. See if it's different. See if you like the results this way. And that's what I think Seth Littrell can do. That's what I think Alan Williams can do in the defensive backfield. I love John Bonamago coming in here to help Evan Crabtree. I think that's a great, great move. And, of course, Coach Chop has already been very much a part of what Tennessee's done on the defensive line. So all that, plus Tim Banks being, of course, retained 3 years at $2.15 million, and I think he deserves it. I think he did a fine job. I think he's had a great career here at Tennessee, winning the big games, coming up in big moments. I understand that. Needs to continue to grow and evolve. Tennessee needs to be better against the Georgias, against the Ohio States in the college football playoffs. But Tim Banks deserves that raise. Willie Martinez deserves to be extended and retained on the staff after what he did last year with Rickey Gibson and Jermon McCoy. Okay? So I like all that. You can say what you want about Ellerby, about Halsley, about, whoever you have a problem with that day, Kelsey Pope, whatever. But at the end of the day, Josh Heupel didn't just sit stagnant this offseason. He went out, though no changes except for Coach Chop being promoted to the core, assistant coaching staff. He went out and made some additions that I think are going to help Tennessee in a big way. So they're not sexy. They don't steal headlines. But I think Josh Heupel did a heck of a job this offseason, adding some experience and some true go-getters to his staff. And I can't wait to see what kind of difference it makes in specific schemes and wrinkles, both offensively and defensively, this spring and, of course, next fall in 2025. Spring practice is getting going. It starts today. Boogie Bentley, what are you looking for, my guy? We'll talk with Boogie Bentley on the other side right here on Locked On Vols. We're all about the stats because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers, they're on an MVP-type level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear wherever that you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with the room for up to 8 people, the Armada the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more, learn all about it. That's at nissanusa.com. Boogie Bentley, what's up, man? Been a couple of months. How's the well? I don't want to say it's spring yet. It's still kind of chilly, but how's the off season treating you and your channel?
Oh, fantastic, man. We're talking a little recruiting. We're getting geared up, ready for spring camp. I'm excited, man. I'm excited. There are some questions about this football team, and you can spin it two ways. You can say, hey, we have an opportunity to get better, or you can say, hey, the sky is falling, doom and gloom. And I kind of feel like Tennessee is a program that is where we're at. You're not quite at that national championship elite level, but you're close. Does Heupel take a step forward, or does he take a step back? We got a lot of questions to answer.
Yeah, and in terms of how most people view it, it's the doom and gloom, right? It's like, oh my gosh, you're losing this. Oh, I can't believe you let all those guys walk in the transfer portal in the defensive backfield. What? Defensive backfield was great last year, right, for the most part. And that's kind of where I'm at on the offensive line. Although, I mean, it's like Cooper Mays is out of eligibility. That's a big loss any way you want to spin it. I think he's played really good football here, but I think Tennessee's going to be fine at guards, okay? David Sanders is going to be an unbelievable talent, but how quickly can he adapt and be a good option at right tackle in the SEC? It's a true freshman. Got a lot of questions on the offensive line, but I do think with the versatility of Notre Dame transfer Sam Pendleton, Wendell Moy is going to be one of the guards. Got a question about center, and then, whoever is your starting center, I think the rest will kind of fall into place. But for me, eyes are going to the offensive line early on. It's exciting, though. I think there's some opportunity to be there because for as good as they blocked in the run last year, rushing for nearly 3,000 yards, it's not just Dylan Sampson, guys, okay? I promise there's guys blocking big boys in front of them. There is a lot left to be desired in terms of overall offensive line production.
Yeah, I think the offensive line has a chance to get better, right? And some of the doom and gloomers, they like to say, why don't we get to play young guys? Where are the young guys? Why can't Glenn Ellerbe develop talent? Well, we're going to see if he can develop talent. We're going to see what William Satterwhite looks like at center. That's who ultimately I think wins that job. But you mentioned the guard position, right? Wendell Moy Jr., you go get Pendleton in the transfer portal as well. Those are guys that still have some football in front of them, but they've played a lot of football, man. They've got a lot of experience. So I think this offensive line could be better. I think Lance Hurd, I thought he played good at times last year. I think he has an opportunity to play really good football. You got 2 5-star offensive tackles that should be starting on this offensive line in 2025. What more can you ask for? But David Sanders, the question got brought up on my channel. Coach Jay said, Boogie, how would you feel? I'm going to ask you this question. How would you feel if we get through spring camp, fall camp, and ultimately Bennett Warren wins that job at right tackle? How would you feel about that?
Good for Bennett Warren. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to name, starting right tackle after spring, but I know what you're saying. I think it's going to be David Sanders simply because you've invested so much into him and kind of where you are in college football now, you got to play him. However, a guy like Bennett Warren could be better equipped to play early, right? And then David could kind of, maybe you could split that a little bit. Oh, you don't rotate offensive linemen. I hate rotating offensive linemen, but look what Tennessee did at right tackle all last year. Maybe in the beginning you could see a little something like that if Sanders is taking a little while to get going, if Sanders' strength of, being an early enrollee 18-year-old, not only having a couple of months in the strength conditioning program, knowing that he's only going to get better and stronger and all that. Maybe you split a little bit early on, but, for me, if it's Bennett Warren's turning heads, Bennett Warren's, with the ones, it wouldn't be shocking, but still, that's going to be David Sanders' position eventually, if not game one, snap one. He's going to be playing 50% of the snaps in game one. I just think it's eventually going to be his, obviously, but I wouldn't be totally shocked if Bennett Warren has great reviews, and I hope he does. I mean, Tennessee needs it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, all those things that you laid out about why it should be David Sanders, if it was Bennett Warren, that tells me that Bennett Warren earned it. So yeah. I say good. I say let the best man play. I think it's going to be David Sanders too. I think he starts from day one. But again, you got 2 5-star tackles on the outside. You got some guys with experience at guard. William Satterwhite. Man, you mentioned Cooper Mays. I mean, Josh Heupel's never had a different center. I mean, yeah, when Coop got hurt, went down, you had some different guys slide in there, but that's been the center. That's been your leader on the offensive line for Josh Heupel's entire tenure at Tennessee.
Yeah, like up until the 2024 season, you never had a true backup center. I think now, like in 2024, William Satterwhite was the true backup center. Now, maybe early on, Dane Davis would have slid down, but I mean, towards the end of the season, I think that was Satterwhite. I think he kind of was the true backup center. But you had Ollie Lane, you had Dane Davis, you had Jerome Carvin. It's going to be kind of a different look, right? And I'm excited to see what William Satterwhite does if he can win that job. I'm like you. I think that's going to be him, but he's got to go out there and prove it. You look at wide receiver, and I don't want to be that guy, the doom and gloom guy, but I mean, you look at the production, and I know 2 to tango, right? I mean, Joe, Nico, like offensive line, like it's a team sport. But I look at the production of the wide receiver group the last 2 years, and in my eyes, it's like only one way, and that's up, right? Despite losing 7 wide receivers out of that room, and Dante Thornton, who's a big-time playmaker and made him some money at the NFL Combine, I'm not too worried about wide receiver. I know that's kind of crazy, but unbelievable talent in Mike Matthews. I think Chris Brazel's only going to get better. I'm so pumped about seeing Travis Smith. I think Amari Jefferson's obviously going to help. Braylon Staley just needs reps. And because the production just isn't where it's needed to be the last 2 years, I'm not too worried about wide receiver. Is that a bad take, Boogie?
I don't think it's a bad take. The only thing I'm worried about with that room is depth. What happens if a guy goes down? Then you got questions. You kind of mentioned the offensive line, compared it to the secondary a year ago. I think the wide receiver room fits that comparison perfectly because it's guys that left, right? It's not Coops out of eligibility, Spraggs and Campbell. Those guys are out of eligibility. It's guys that are choosing to go elsewhere. Now, were they told to go elsewhere? Did they want more money? Did they not like the money they were being offered? I don't know. I don't really care, but I saw somebody tweet out and said, who would you rather have at wide receiver? Nathan Laycock, Nate Spillman, Caleb Webb, and Squirrel White? Or would you rather have Mike Matthews, Braylon Staley, Chris Brazel, Amari Jefferson? Give me that second group. Again, unproven. It's a question mark, and that's the big theme, man. I get it. It's spring camp. It's who looks the part. Oh, he's got the body. He looks the part, and we get to the spring game, and some walk-on is flashing and making plays, and everybody's tweeting about him. I get it, but I'm still excited to see spring and see what these wide receivers can do, man. I just think Mike Matthews, Braylon Staley, what does Chris Brazel look like in his second year? I thought he was starting to come on. I'm with you. I agree. The only thing I would maybe disagree is if a guy goes down, the depth at wide receiver is what really concerns me more.
And that's why I think they got to go get, and I know you never want to phrase it this way because like the guy's going to read all the media reports and the articles and the graphics and all that, but you got to go get another body. I mean, I'm with you there. Like that's why the spring portal is going to be important for Tennessee. What do you make about this whole Rickey Gibson situation? To me, it's pretty black and white. It is what it is. I think it's going to get resolved, but it's still just not. It kind of makes you feel uneasy, right, when you make it a public affair, if you will.
Right. I made a video on it. I made a video when he first went to the portal. I let it soak. I thought about it. I really didn't like it. What I don't like is you taking advantage of your misfortune of your teammate, right? That's what we don't like. You slap the sign, I'm going to give my all for Tennessee today. Are you? Or are you going to put yourself in the best position to make money? Now, I went pretty hard at Rickey Gibson in that video, but on the flip side, it's not Rickey Gibson's fault. It's the system's fault. It's the system we're in. It's the world of college football. Like, do you blame a guy for having an opportunity to go make money? I'm with you. I don't like that it's public. And then, how does this work out? Does he end up going through practice on Friday? I don't know when you're going to air this. I'm assuming he does based on what you guys over at VolQuest have said. Does that mean the deal is done? Do they take care of this before spring camp, or is he just going to go through camp? And then how does Josh Heupel handle that? Like, how are you going to give Rickey Gibson reps if he's going to walk when the portal opens? Like, I just don't see how you handle that. And then how do your teammates feel about that, right? How does Boo Carter feel about it, who was in the public eye for trying to work a better deal? How does Mike Matthews feel about it? Do they come back for more money? Like, you got to put some type of regulation on this thing. I think we're going to see a big change to the spring schedule, to everything with college football over the next 12 months. They have to fix this problem. I just don't get it. Like, so again, do I like Rickey Gibson doing it? No, but it's the system. It's the world we live in.
Yeah, you got to get rid of that spring portal window, and that's a conversation for another day. That's a podcast for another day. But, I mean, I agree with all that you said, and you kind of brought up the two names there. I mean, Tennessee's already done this with Mike Matthews, with Boo Carter, with other guys on the roster that nobody knows about. I mean, you said it's the system, right? I mean, you have a good year, you get more money. Even if you don't have a good year, you still you request more money because you think you're worth more than what they think you're. I mean, it's just... It is what it is, and these are agents driving it out there. I mean, this might not even have been Rickey Gibson, but it's his team, it's his leadership, and like you said, taking advantage of an injury, that's not great. And I got to get you out of here. I promise you 10 minutes, but we can talk about O-line, cornerback depth, wide receiver, freshman transfers. I mean, we could talk for hours on that, and we'd be excited about it. But at the end of the day, Nico. It is all about Nico. Nico takes a step in the fall. He covers some of these warts. Tennessee's offense gets back to where it's going to be. It's all about Nico. I think Nico's going to benefit from new voices in the room, right? Seth Littrell coming over. I think that's a big get for Josh Heupel. Of course, he's not the OC or the quarterback's coach, but just a new, fresh, coat of paint on the wall. That don't hurt nobody, especially for an offense that arguably could be considered a little bit stale the last couple of years compared to the first 2 years.
Yeah, I love the moves that Josh Heupel is making. Not to completely derail the conversation, but you've added what, 3 guys on this coaching staff that have head coach experience? Like that there is so much value there. The special teams guy, he's got head coaching experience.
Yeah.
The guy they just added this week has head coaching experience. I love it. More eyes, like you said, in the room. It's not just Josh Heupel in there. It's not just Joey Halsley in there scheming things up. It's everybody in the that's an analyst. It's everybody on the coaching staff. But Nico's got to take a step. And I think $8 million, right? $8 million. $8 million makes it hard to remember that he was a redshirt freshman. And I get it. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that excuse for Nico, but that's the reality of the situation. So you hope he takes a big step in his second year as a full-time starter. And I think he can. Was he fully healthy all last year? I don't know. I think we saw early in the year that Nico can make all the throws. The ball location, the precision, the accuracy. I think he's cool, calm, collected. He's got to take a step, but everybody around him has to take another step. How much better is Nico if they're protecting him? You mentioned leading the conference in rushing for what? Back-to-back seasons? We got to protect Nico better. Give him time. He's got to make better decisions. He's got to be quicker with the football. We'll see. It's year 2, man. It's year 2. I feel like we are at a crossroads, which is stupid to say, and maybe it's too dramatic, but we're right there, man. We are so close to being an elite level team, a true national championship team. And I feel like you said naysayers earlier, a lot of the naysayers are just looking for an excuse to say Josh Heupel is not the guy. He has to take a step in 2025.
Boogie, off season's here, but spring practice getting going. I'm sure you guys are going to be busy over there on the channel talking Vols.
We're going to go live. I don't know when you're putting this up. We're live Friday morning.
Friday morning I'm putting it up.
We're going to be live at 10:30 a.m. this morning. We're going to go through Josh Heupel's press conference. We'll be talking about all the news coming out of the first practice. And then we're going live every single Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, talking about spring camp, recruiting, everything going on with Tennessee football. Also on Sundays, we play video games, we drink, we hang out, and we have a good time. So come hang out with us on Sunday nights at 6:30.
So you're listening to this early Friday morning on the way to work or whatever. Be sure when you're in the cubicle, when you're, taking the dog for a walk, whenever you're at lunch, whatever, tune in. Catch the replay if you don't catch it live, 10:30 on the Talking Vols YouTube channel. Boogie, appreciate it as always, man. Thanks so much.
Always a good time. Go Vols.
Great to catch back up with Boogie. That's Boogie Bentley, Talking Vols Network on YouTube. Got a great community, fun-filled online Tennessee fans. So, again, if you're listening to the show, check out his show coming up later this morning at 10:30. And if it's after that time you're listening to the show or watching the show, of course, you can check the replay on his YouTube channel. Spring practice is here. Excited to discuss what I saw, but then a little bit of what we're going to be allowed to see later this morning. I might come out over the weekend at some point if I have time and do some, but certainly we'll talk about it on Monday's show. And the big news from Josh Heupel as he opens up spring camp, some of the storylines, all that and more. Talking spring football all next week right here on Locked On Vols. How Tennessee does against South Carolina, ESPN's latest bracketology, Tennessee basketball in the SEC tournament beginning next week. Tennessee baseball happening right now. Loads and loads to talk about it. No better place than right here on Locked On Vols. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors about this show. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are free. We are available wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend, everybody. This is Locked On Vols.